God, please forgive us when we presume upon your grace. Let us understand the graciousness of that grace, that we might move from life to life, from faith to faith, and from grace to grace. We might understand that we are saved by grace through faith, and even that faith is not of ourselves, but is of you, so that it is not of him who chooses, not of him who runs, not of him who wills, but of thee who shows us mercy. Amen. Every Christian I've ever asked, do you believe in the sovereignty of God? They say yes, of course they believe in the sovereignty of God. If you scratch that affirmation just a little bit, begin to probe it beneath the surface, within 5 or 10 minutes you discover that there's precious little sovereignty left. The Bible says, without Christ we can do nothing. That nothing is not a little something. Your freedom, which is real and true, is always and everywhere limited by the freedom of God. God is the one who is sovereign, not us. The lie in the culture is, unless a person has the moral power within his soul to do what is spiritually right, then unless we have that power, we're not really free. Now, how possibly could we get further away from the biblical view of man than that? That pagan view of the will is on a collision course with the Bible that uses a different metaphor that talks about slavery. The fallen human will is enslaved to sin. Yes, we still can do what we want to do, but the problem is with the want to. The scripture tells us over and over and again that we don't want God in our thinking. We want to be sovereign. We want to be autonomous. We want to rule. We want to reign. We want to do what we want to do. We say that God is sovereign over creation, sovereign over nature, sovereign over history, sovereign over law. But when it comes to the purposes of salvation, we strip him of his sovereignty. Do you know how many times when I talk about electing grace and the sovereignty of divine election, people have raised the objection to me, that's not fair. If this doctrine is true, then it's not fair and God is not righteous. You see, if we experience God's grace once, we're grateful. If we experience it a second time, we're a little bit jaded. By the third time, not only do we expect it, but we demand it. We harbor in our souls the idea that if God doesn't choose me, there's something wrong with him rather than with me. God reserves to himself the absolute sovereign right to pardon whom he will, and to the rest he gives justice. Not one person in this universe deserves the grace of God. And if you think you deserve the grace of God, the minute that idea comes into your head that grace is something that God is obliged to give to you, let a bell go off in your brain that tells you that you're no longer thinking about grace. Because grace, by definition, is something God is not required to give. That's the mystery of election. Why doesn't God give all people equal grace? Why isn't God an equal opportunity redeemer? Question you ought to be asking is, why me? Why did he bring me out of darkness and into light? Think of your own conversion and how God, in his grace, rescued you. By a grace that is sovereign.